If this lighting is awful, I do apologise, but I'm not getting up to fix it, so. Hello, welcome back. Welcome if you're new, my name is Flo, how are you doing? Before I start today's wrap up, I would very much like a round of applause. Because I didn't finish my TBR, but I kind of nearly did. And I want praise for that. I was going to do stats and then completely forgot. I can't remember exactly how much of my TBR I read. I will put a lovely graphic on the screen. I think it was 7 out of 9 is the number I have in my head, which I realise is not all of them, but to me, that's pretty decent. Like, we really tried. Okay, let's get started. Okay, the first book I read in May, I actually don't have anymore because I had to give it back to the library, but I read Luster by Leilani. Now, if you've watched the video where I read this, I read it in, I did a little vlog of getting my puppy, and I read it in that video. And here's the thing, if you've seen that video, you know my conundrum with this book, is that I just don't know what happened in it. I just don't know. And that's not the book's fault. I would like to clarify. It's my dog's fault. Obviously when you're getting a new puppy, like, they don't sleep, which means you don't sleep. So I hadn't slept. I hadn't slept. I was like up all night with the dog. I was just very, very tired. And then I was trying to do some reading to start my May TBR. And I picked Luster simply because it was one of the shorter books on my TBR. I think it's definitely under 300 pages. I want to say it's like around the 280 mark. And I was like, okay, that sounds super doable. But as it turns out, the writing style is very like poetic and metaphorical. And I feel like I should have picked a different book. From what I understand of the story, which is limited, it follows a woman who basically gets involved with a married man, and then she kind of ends up having this like quite complicated relationship with the man's wife and daughter. She kind of ends up in their life, and it was interesting, and I actually would like to reread it at some point because, as I say, I just didn't take very much of it in, and it definitely had promise. I just don't really know what it was about, which is not ideal for a book review. Anyway, moving on to books that I actually do know what they're about. I think we then did a book scavenger video, so if you haven't seen that, go watch it quickly because I'm about to spoil what we got. But in that video, we read Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This was my first TJ Klune book, and I was surprised. This is not what I was expecting, like, even remotely, but it ended up making me cry. Like, I ended up getting so attached to these characters. It basically follows a guy called Wallace who, he's not a nice guy. He's very grumpy, very angry, very work orientated, not nice to other people, and then he dies. Not a spoiler, happens in the first chapter, happens immediately. He dies, and he kind of goes to this like purgatory place, and basically the entire book is set in this house, or almost the entire book, set in this house. It's like a tea shop, and you get this really cute collection of characters. They're actually adorable, and it's like whimsical. It's like a whimsical, cozy fantasy, which isn't a genre I would say I enjoy. And so when I realised it was that, I started getting a bit nervous because I was like, I'm very much a high stakes kind of girly. But this was gorgeous. This was actually gorgeous. And also, I would say it was like cozy for like maybe the first third to half. And then we got these like bigger plot points coming in. So it was cozy, like not exactly high stakes. I mean, it is quite literally about life and death, but it's more about Wallace getting ready to move over into the past life. It's not like, I don't know how to explain it. The stakes are technically life and death, but it's kind of low stakes. But in the second half, you get a lot more plot points. And it just, I don't know, this book just took me completely by surprise, and it was absolutely stunning. And the characters. Hugo, I want Hugo to be my best friend. There's a cute dog in this. Like, it was just gorgeous. It was absolutely gorgeous. And I did not die at the end. I cried at the end. Then, because everybody is reading Funny Story by Emily Henry, I figured I should probably actually read last year's release, which was Happy Place. I basically did a video where I was reading the 2024 Goodreads winners, because I realised I had only read one. I kind of assume we all know what this is about at this point, so I will whistle-stop tour it, but it is about Wyn and Harriet. They were in a relationship, they break up, they then go on this like friends slash kind of couples getaway that they go on every year, and then for reasons which I won't explain, they basically end up deciding to pretend to still be together to not ruin the vibes of the getaway. And it was stunning. It was almost enemies to lovers, kind of, because obviously they've broken up, so they've got this like enemies to lovers tension kind of going on. I feel like I've not heard anyone explain it like that, so maybe I'm just kind of making that up. But because they had previously broken up, they have this like angsty annoyedness going on. They're cross with each other, and you know that's my favourite trope. It's had the best supporting cast. Like, everybody was so fleshed out. All of the like friends in the group were real people who had like their own internal dramas going on and their own like things and relationships going on. And I must say, I do think this is my favourite Emily Henry book that I've read so far. I think this is her best one. I felt very connected to the themes of like growing up and moving away from your friends and all that stuff. The themes did it for me. I kind of knew they were going into it. Like, when I heard that that was like the core of the story, I was like, oh, that's gonna hurt my feelings, but like in a fun way. And it did. Then also in that video, I read the winner of Best Fiction for 2023, which was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. First R.F. Kuang book. I own Babel/Babel, still don't know how to pronounce it, which I have honestly been putting off because I'm kind of scared of it because it's long and intellectual and it looks intimidating. And then I read this and I was like, oh my gosh, I love her writing style. So now I'm kind of excited to pick up Babel, even though it still looks long and scary and intellectual. But this was somewhere between a drama stroke thriller stroke satirical fiction. It basically follows this woman called June, I think her name was, and her friend Athena is an Asian author, and she dies. She chokes on a pancake. When Athena dies, June basically steals Athena's manuscript, makes a couple of changes, passes it off as her own, publishes it. It does really well because Athena's a good author. And then you kind of get this like massive spiral of like all of the stuff that happens after that. And honestly, reading this book gave me anxiety because, I mean, the main character in this is insufferable, but she just, every time I was like, she's gonna realise what she's doing and she's gonna kind of at least make some amends, or she's gonna like start moving in the right direction. She just kept not, it just kept getting worse. And every time I was like, no, it can't get worse than this. And then it just kept getting worse. Like, the main character basically had no redeeming qualities. But it was such a quick read because you had that kind of like anxiousness of like watching it all unravel. And I think I said when I was reading it, it felt like a car crash. Like, you just didn't want to look away. So really important conversations here about racism, specifically in the publishing industry, but also sort of generally, as well as like social media trolling. So the book does a really good job of sort of weaving really serious conversations with a really fast-paced plot. So you end up with this like really bingeable writing style that is also very deep and important. And I honestly just love this. And as I say, I am now ready. I'm ready to tackle Babel, I think, or Babel. Somebody tell me what it's called, please. I'm just realising I actually had such a good reading month. Okay, we then did a video where I tried to finish my May TBR. Spoilers, I did not, but I came quite close. So the next 4 books are all the books that I read in that video. This is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is another one that, this is really not what I was expecting, because I've heard this described as like time traveling fantasy. So, I mean, I know it's a very short book, so maybe that should have occurred to me that it wasn't going to be like a massive like high concept fantasy, but that was really what I was expecting, and it's not that even remotely. It is a very like small introspective philosophical book. It's basically interconnected short stories about people time traveling, except that the rules of the time travel are so specific. So basically, in a nutshell, if you want to time travel, you have to come to this cafe, sit in this one seat, and then you travel back in time, but you have to stay in that seat. So when you go back in time, you're still in the cafe and you're still exactly where you were before. And there's lots of other rules, but basically the entire thing takes place in this cafe. And so I think that was kind of what immediately threw me, was I was like, okay, this is not high concept. There are no quests, journeys. I thought we were going to be time traveling through the 20s. Those people who travel back quite recently. I mean, the very first story, she travels back like a week. So definitely not what I was expecting, but the writing was very, very beautiful. Because the stories are so short, I mean, you have 4 stories within this, but I think it's only, 213 pages. So because it's so short, you don't spend that much time with everyone, so you don't necessarily get as connected to the characters. You don't have enough time, really. So you kind of get this sort of snapshot of each of their lives and each of the people. There was one story in here that was really moving, which was basically about this husband who, I think he had Alzheimer's, and he was like starting to forget his wife. So that story was super moving. But yeah, you basically only get little moments with each of these characters and then you move on, because each story is, I don't know, roughly 50 pages. You only get small amounts of moments with them. But the writing was absolutely beautiful. Then we read Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Another good one. Oh my god. This one I think is one of her older ones, I want to say. Although it does actually have a lot of like content in here about Carrie Soto, which is interesting, and has really put me in the mood to read Carrie Soto, will not lie. And spoiler alert, Carrie Soto may or may not be on next month's TBR. Go watch my blindly picking my TBR if you wanna see the other books though. This follows the River family. The whole like style of this kind of reminded me of Seven Husbands. Not really the content, but just kind of like the setup of, it was like the same like Hollywood setting and the same like now and then timelines. So in that sense, it kind of reminded me, like the vibes and the like tone kind of give Seven Husbands. The story is completely different. You follow the River family, specifically Nina is like the oldest sister. She is a famous surfer, and then you have the 2 brothers and the little sister, and all of them are like kind of famous in their own right. Their father used to be a super famous singer, and you kind of get the then timeline is their parents meeting, and June, the mum, I literally love her. I literally love her so much, and whenever anything even like remotely bad happened to her, I was like, no, not to my girl June. I just adored her. And then the kind of now timeline is the River family are basically throwing a party, like a big Hollywood party. They do it every year. And you know from the back of the book that the party ends in a fire. It's basically a book about family and like family drama, family like relationships. And I honestly would say go into this as blind as you possibly can, because that is what I did. I didn't even really know the genre going in, and I just think that's the best way to have a good experience with this book. But also maybe save this book for summer, because I feel like the summer vibes would be impeccable. And we read Fleabag by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. This is a very short 39-page one-woman play. This is the original text that the TV show was based on, if anyone has seen the TV show. If you haven't, highly recommend. It's a 2-season TV show. In the series, there are like multiple characters. In the play, Phoebe Waller-Bridge plays everyone. And it is so funny, so surprisingly sad and like emotional. And her subtlety of like, it just feels so relatable at parts and like satirical and hysterical at parts. Like she's just, oh, she's such a good writer, such a good actor as well. I watched a like screening of her performing the one-woman play, and she's so talented. She is so talented. Highly recommend this. It's 39 pages. It is so short and it's just absolutely stunning. And last but very much not least, we read Lies by Michael Grant. I feel like I've done nothing but talk about this series, so I am going to kind of run through this kind of quickly. But this is the 3rd book in the Gone series by Michael Grant. It follows a series of teenagers who are basically stuck in a dome, and all the adults have disappeared, and it's like they're developing magical powers, and there are horror bits, there are romance bits, it's like dystopia, fantasy. It's so fun. You follow like the largest cast of characters. There's probably like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 main characters in this series. Just, it holds a place in my heart. I've spoken about this so much, so I'm not going to bang on about it, but I just love this series. Like, it's YA, but it doesn't read YA, and yeah, I'm so happy to be back in the world. And there you have it, that is May's reading. We read 8 books in May. So I'm pretty happy with that. I know lots of people do these videos and they've read like 20 books, 30 books, and props to them. Really good. I literally don't know how you do that though. I literally don't know. More importantly, I read good books this month. I read really good books. I read a few like surprising ones as well, like ones that I was like, really like took me by surprise. I didn't know if they were going to be my thing, i.e. Miss Cozy Fantasy over here. Anywhoozle, I'm excited for next month's reading. I feel like I have the oddest TBR for next month. Like it's just, I'm looking at it now, maybe it's not even that weird, but to me it feels just like very like random. Like there's lots of very odd choices on that and like a very like big mix of genres and stuff. I don't know, maybe it's not that weird, it feels weird to me. But I feel like the next month reading should hopefully be good. Or it'll be a disaster, one of the two. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I have some fun videos planned for next month, so if you want to stick around, you should subscribe. Thank you very much for being here. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye!